Welcome to the Inside Scoop, filming it live from the On3 studios. I'm your host, Josh Newberg. I got J.D. PicKell here riding shotgun with me, and J.D., we're full go for National Signing Day in about 36 hours from now, but the action's already started.
All gas, no brakes, baby. It's Hayes Fawcett's season, Josh Newberg's season. Fired up to be along for the ride, brother.
Yeah, it has been, I've been all over the place. This Dante Moore news that just broke, we're going to talk about it in a minute here with Chad Simmons. Before we do that, though, let's reset the top 10 in recruiting, just where things stand kind of coming out of the weekend. I had this graphic made about an hour and a half ago, JD. Things are happening so quick right now. I had to see if it was still current. It is. The top 10 still stands as so. Alabama number 1 in that spot solidly. Georgia number 2 nipping at their heels. The Canes, they've been moving in and out of the 3 and 4 spot since Thursday, but they are locked into the number 3 spot as of Monday morning. Ohio State, Texas round out your top 5, followed by Notre Dame, LSU, Oklahoma, Florida, and Clemson. So we'll see how this all changes before signing day. But right now, let's just get right into it. The man himself, Chad Simmons. We're ready to get all the Simmons scoop. Ooh, Chad, how you doing down there in Georgia?
Doing good, man. How about you guys?
We're doing really good. And now let's just get it started right here, right now. 5-star quarterback Dante Moore has flipped his commitment. About 30 minutes ago, he announced that he will be a part of the UCLA Bruins class instead of the Oregon Ducks, the team that he's been committed to for months. Chad, how did it all go down?
You know, I think it all started with Kenny Dillingham obviously opting to go take the head coaching job at Arizona State, and then that opened the door. Obviously, Dan Lanning had to fill his shoes, find the new OC, quickly connect and reassure that Dante can still fit there and be that guy there. I think that combined with, Bo Nix coming back, I think UCLA going to the Big Ten, more where Dante's family is in Detroit, Michigan, and then the opportunity to play, I think, right away at UCLA, I think all factored into this.
All right, JD, I got to ask you real quick. Do you think that Bo Nix announcing his comeback was just a coincidence that Dante Moore flipped, or do you think it was the catalyst?
I mean, I think you have to look at it as a contributing factor. Whether it was the factor, maybe that's a conversation we'll get to in the future, but Bo Nix trying to obviously help his draft stock. The conversation around Bo Nix from what he was at Auburn to what he has been this last year at Oregon, I mean, I don't blame him for wanting to come back. And it sounds like, I'm sure Chad will tell us more here in a second, but playing early was a contributing factor for him wanting to be at UCLA as opposed to Oregon, or what's the status there, Chad?
I think that definitely is a factor. I mean, him wanting to play early and get that shot to be the guy right away. He's a 2-time state champion, and Chip did a great job. Chip Kelly coming in late, making that 11th hour surge. And I do think the Big Ten factor played into this as well. UCLA and USC going to the Big Ten, I think that factored in. But I do think playing time and just, the comfortable feeling with the OC, the offense, and not knowing the new OC at Oregon as well, I think all factored in for Dante.
The number 4 ranked quarterback overall, the 9th best player in the country. Now, he's going to UCLA. What can Dan Lanning and Oregon do with less than 2 days until National Signing Day? Is there anybody out there that you think that they might turn their attention to, or do they just pass on taking a quarterback altogether?
There's been talks about Novosad and trying to, work him maybe to sign later. But I think in the end, likely to go to the portal, whether it be now or maybe next time in January when new guys enter the portal after bowl season. But I do think they'll get a quarterback. They have to get a quarterback at some point, whether it's now in the early signing period or in the portal come January.
Right. Really interesting news coming out of Detroit, Michigan. That's where Dante Moore is from, but he flips from Oregon to UCLA. Just a huge recruiting development, 36 hours till signing day. Chad, I want to clear out some other news that happened over the weekend. On Sunday, 4-star running back Mark Fletcher commits to Miami. Now, he took a visit. He was a former Ohio State commitment at running back. He decommitted on November 16, shortly after he took a visit to UF. Then he takes another visit to UF on December 9th. It looked like they had a lot of momentum with Fletcher, but in the end, it's Miami. How were the Canes able to come in and steal Mark Fletcher from Florida?
Yeah, Florida did have the momentum, at least on the outside looking in. When I talked to Mark Fletcher Sunday night, an hour and a half before he broke the commitment news, he did say he was pretty neutral. People were kind of sleeping on Miami, in his words to me, and that he always liked Miami, always liked the coaching staff at Miami. He had his eye on Miami from the beginning, and that was his dream school. Obviously, the last visit means a lot. They got him on campus after he played for a state championship game this weekend. Him and his family, loved the pitch. They said they see the great opportunity at Miami, and the rest is kind of history. He said it was not as clear-cut as people were making it out to be, that Florida had the momentum like people thought on the outside.
And Chad, every time I check on Miami in these On3 consensus team recruiting rankings, they got the jetpack on, like they're all the way up to 3 right now at the time of us being live. Doesn't sound like they're done yet. Who else is in play for the Hurricanes right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest name out there is Miami legacy Damari Brown. He was on campus this weekend as well. They're now in play for his brother, Devontae Brown, who's in the portal as well. They have both those guys on campus this weekend. He's a teammate of Mark Fletcher as well. And I think they're in a battle there with the University of Alabama. Bama has some momentum. Florida State's been in this discussion as well. But I think this one comes really down to the wire between Miami and Alabama.
Chad, this recruiting cycle has kind of been unique. We don't see a lot of in-state head-to-head battles within the Big Three in Florida. For some reason, over the last couple years, they've just avoided each other. Not this year. Mario Cristobal and Billy Napier have been throwing haymakers throughout the recruiting cycle. Most recently, we talked about Mark Fletcher, but on Thursday, 5-star offensive tackle Samson Okunlola goes to Miami. Fletcher goes to Miami on Sunday. Hayes Fawcett put up a tweet yesterday that was really interesting. It's crazy to think about how many top recruits' decisions came down to just Miami and Florida. And if you look at the results, Miami has been taking some wins on the recruiting trail while, Florida, they've been bouncing back and forth, but it looks like they're fizzling out down the stretch here. Does Billy Napier have enough trouble already within the SEC? Do you think that he saw this coming, these head-to-head battles with Mario Cristobal within his own state?
I think if you go coach in Florida, you have to expect to have head-to-head battles. You want head-to-head battles. You want to get the best players in your state to come to your school. So whether you're Cristobal, Norvell, Billy Napier, you kind of expect that and you kind of want that. That means the best players are looking at staying home. So in the end, I think Napier, understands that, expects that. Again, this is a new age of recruiting. We know NIL is factoring into multiple deals that the guys you listed on that page a second ago, those were factors there. How big, we don't know, but at one time, we thought Florida was trending for Malik Bryant, for Mark Fletcher. Those guys were maybe heading to Florida at one time, but in the end, it's about who can close right now. I don't think Napier at all is surprised by this. I think he understands. He's coached at Alabama. He's been around the SEC. He's from Georgia, played high school ball there. He knows what SEC football is about and what SEC's recruiting is about. I think he'll bounce back just fine.
Yeah. Now, Miami, they seem to be way ahead of schedule because of their 2023 recruiting. Do you think that they can sustain this without putting the wins behind it? We saw it this year, but does Miami have to prove it on the field?
Well, typically coaches get a pass for that first year, maybe even first and second year, but you have to show the wins on the field, the production, the development. You can only recruit at a high level for so long if you're not playing up to those rankings on the field. So I do think year 2 under Cristobal will carry a lot of weight about how this program at Miami moves forward.
All right, let's stay in the state of Florida. 4-star UF commitment Andy Jean, wide receiver from Miami Northwestern, took an official visit to FSU this weekend. Now, Florida cannot afford another defection, another loss on the recruiting trail. Do you have Andy Jean on flip watch, or was this visit just for fun?
Definitely not just for fun. I think this was much more about business for Andy Jean. And I don't know if I put him on quote unquote flip watch, but he is one that I'm tracking a little bit closer than I was maybe a couple of weeks ago. I do know Florida State's making that move. Hakeem Williams is working on him to join him at Florida State. He has a good connection with Norvell, Ron Dugans. He likes the offense under Norvell. I think he does have some questions about, Florida's offense, how much they throw the ball, how he would fit in, how he would be featured at the University of Florida, who would be the quarterback throwing him the ball at the University of Florida. So I think a lot of factors, and there is some concern based on my intel at the University of Florida about just how hard Andy Jean is giving Florida State that look here late in the process.
Does he sign on Wednesday or does he sign on Friday? I saw kind of conflicting rumors about Andy Jean.
I think the plan right now is still Wednesday, but again, I don't think anything's locked in. If he needs more time, he'll go to Thursday or Friday.
All right, we'll keep watching that one. Now, can FSU hold on to four-star edge commitment Keldrick Faulk? He's one of their top defensive commitments, and they really need to fill that need on the edge. He visited both schools this weekend. He was at Florida State on Saturday and then Auburn on Sunday. What are you hearing about Keldrick Faulk and where he'll sign on Wednesday?
Yeah, both these teams need Keldrick Faulk to play for them really right away. Auburn is in a big need, just like Florida State, for pass rush guys on the edge, guys that can play, 3 downs on the defensive line. So obviously he's been committed to Florida State since July. And it's funny because I've known Faulk since his freshman year, and really Auburn and Florida State have been his top schools since that time. They offered him very early, obviously different coaching staff, different people at Auburn, obviously, but I do think Auburn is a threat to Florida State. Based on my intel, FSU, when he left Tallahassee, they did not think he was going to Auburn University on Sunday. So I do think this visit gives him a little bit of hesitation about where they are with Faulk. I do know he's had conversations with both schools, Auburn and Florida State, over the last 24 hours as well. So this one's definitely worth watching the next couple of days.
Chad, Alabama has got a 3-piece when it comes to the 5-star recruits they have committed. Keon Keeley, Caleb Downs, Justice Haynes. Is there potential to add even another 5-star when it comes to National Signing Day, or what's your outlook for the Tide?
Absolutely. I mean, how about another? I mean, look, this is Alabama. We kind of have to expect this. I mean, this is what they do. This is the standard that Saban has set. This is what the fans and the public expect. And obviously you start in the home state with Quay Russaw and James Smith, 2 teammates that I still like where Alabama's at. For late in the process. Obviously, James Smith on his own went to Auburn without Quay on Saturday. I still like Alabama for the pair. Right now you have Desmond Ricks in play, and obviously the hot name this weekend is Caden Proctor, the Iowa commit, the offensive tackle. I think this visit said a lot about Proctor's interest in Alabama and how open he is to leaving his home state. Obviously, he has a lot of pressure to stay home and play for Iowa, but he was at Oregon a few weeks ago, Alabama this weekend, and now here late in the process, Proctor's definitely trending pretty strong about leaving his home state.
So the number 2 ranked offensive tackle in the country, Caden Proctor, who you're referring to, is committed to Iowa. Now we knew Oregon had been messing around with him, got him on campus, and had got some traction with him. Where did Alabama come from in these last couple weeks?
Oh, they've been around. When he picked Iowa to begin with and committed, he picked them over Alabama. Bama, I think I want to say second or third day, coaches hit the road early in December. Nick Saban quietly in stealth mode went up to Iowa, sat down with Caden Proctor, made that pitch. There was talk about him even being on campus for the Iron Bowl. He didn't make that in November, and Bama got the last visit. Offensive line coach Eric Wofford's been up there multiple times over the last couple of weeks as well. So Bama didn't go away. Bama's still being Bama. Bama's still recruiting hard, and Bama's definitely an option here late for Caden Proctor.
Well, Alabama's also a little bit on the defensive here, just 36 hours till signing day. 4-star cornerback Tony Mitchell, who's been committed to the Tide for some time now, took a last weekend official visit to Texas A&M. Auburn is also involved. What are you hearing on Tony Mitchell just days before signing day?
Yeah, Mitchell's been pretty transparent about Texas A&M, being a factor. At one time before he committed to Bama, back in the summer, A&M was viewed as probably the front runner if he did commit to Bama maybe their biggest competition. He had a great visit over the weekend. He's been there to College Station around half a dozen times, spent time with Jimbo Fisher, his position coach, TJ Rushing, if he went there. Those guys have a great connection, but I do think Auburn is the one to watch. A&M will definitely be a factor. They want to be a factor, but I think Auburn is the biggest competitor to Alabama late. Zach Etheridge is a guy at Auburn that stayed on staff with Hugh Freeze, and that's a big factor here. I think, it comes down to Auburn selling that playing time. Hey, look, you can still stay home, play for an in-state program, but instead of going to Alabama, maybe playing a little bit, waiting your turn, being developed over time, come in here, learn on the fly, play right away for an in-state program like Auburn. So I think Auburn is one to watch here in the last couple of days.
What's your gut tell you there?
It's always going to be hard to flip a kid from Alabama. Alabama's still Alabama. They're going to recruit Mitchell like they have from the get-go. So I lean towards him staying with Alabama. But listen, I've said for a couple of weeks now, Auburn is a threat to the Crimson Tide for Tony Mitchell.
All right, let's move on over to five-star corner Desmond Ricks. Ricks kind of laid it out several weeks ago saying LSU, Florida, and Alabama were his final three. He took official visits to all three, most recently LSU over this past weekend. Right now, who do you think needs to land Desmond Ricks more? LSU, UF, or Alabama?
I probably should never say Alabama needs to land anybody, all that. And they just have a stacked roster. So I'm not even going to think about saying Alabama. Yeah, they all could definitely use him for sure. Ricks is a premier corner with size, athleticism, length, upside, potential, all that. He checks a lot of boxes. I think if you look on paper, maybe at the rosters, maybe LSU, just they're very thin at corner. That they need a guy like him probably to step in and play right away. But he likely could play as a true freshman at any of these three schools. But I know all three programs are selling that playing time and development, under their coaching staffs.
So what are you hearing about him coming out of this LSU visit? Now, Desmond Ricks is making his way today. He's not going to make his decision until Thursday. Most players are making their decision Wednesday on National Signing Day. So what's Desmond Ricks going to do?
I don't think anybody knows. I'm not sure anybody's going to know. One thing I have picked up on is that he's likely not going to tell the coaching staff where he's going ahead of time. He wants to keep this completely to himself and in that tight circle. We'll see if anything starts to leak come Wednesday or Thursday. But, coming out of every visit, Florida set the bar high. Corey Raymond, a legendary defensive back coach in his time at LSU. Then Bama, of course, Bama's Bama, T-Rob, Charles Kelly, Nick Saban. They had some confidence coming out of Tuscaloosa. Then this weekend, LSU, who was looked at as the favorite heading into these OVs, felt good about their visit as well. Robert Steeples, Matt House, Brian Kelly. Every time he's visited somewhere this month, that team has had some level of confidence about where they stand with Desmond Ricks, but not any school, based on what I've picked up on, is overly confident that they're the favorite here just 3 days away. So I do think there's still some work to be done between now and Thursday for Ricks to finalize his decision.
Well, teams will have an extra day to work on him, so we'll see what happens there. Five-star defensive lineman Mateo Uiagalelei started trending to USC on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. It's a change. Previously, it was Ohio State. What's happened over the weekend for this to start happening on the RPM machine?
Josh, this really started to shift a little bit once we heard that DJ, his older brother, is going to leave Clemson. Based on what I've picked up on, maybe DJ being so far away, going through some difficult times as a starter, being pulled, the emotions there from a parent side across the country. I started to hear that maybe these guys end up staying closer to home where the parents can be a little bit more attached to what's happening on the West Coast. And at that point, things started shifting towards the local USC team. Obviously, Oregon's been involved as well. But Ohio State has been viewed with Mateo's recruitment as the front runner for probably about 4 or 5 months strong, with Ryan Day, Larry Johnson leading the way. But I think location and kind of what happened there at Clemson with DJ kind of triggered this shift to maybe USC picking up on that opening, going in hard. And again, we talked about the last visit with Mark Fletcher, about him going to Miami. Last night, Lincoln Riley, Sean Newell, the USC staff went in home with Mateo and that family, and it seems like they're in a great spot to land him come Wednesday.
Now, Chad, I want to pick your brain on this a little bit. I know, obviously, you being a recruiting expert. Recruiting also is now a thing in the transfer portal that we just have to talk about, and I'm sure you heard Travis Hunter, as expected, has announced he's going to be playing his college football somewhere else. What is the feel you have for him as to where he might end up playing next year?
Yeah, I think, obviously I put out an intel piece last night right after, the news broke that he was in the portal in that, 11:30, 11:45 range Eastern time. And, based on my intel, he's not a lock to go follow Coach Prime at the University of Colorado. I think, obviously, that connection with Deion, is strong. He pulled him from Florida State last year on signing day, one of the biggest shockers ever in recruiting. But if it's as big of a shocker, I don't know. But right now, I'm leaning that he does not end up at Colorado. I've heard, Georgia, Miami, USC are three schools that may make a big run at this one late. Or
no
I guess
Florida State in there?
Here. Yeah, I've not heard FSU just yet about him going back to Louisville. But I have heard Miami, the other Florida school in there. At this point, again, I think it comes down with Travis now. He had a good year at Jackson State, but now he knows that, look, it's big boy football time. He wants to get developed as a player and prepared for the NFL draft. I think that's NIL definitely could be a factor, likely will be a factor, but it won't be the factor I don't think it was this time a year ago, where he went with Jackson State with all the accolades, the opportunities to play at Deion and under, that umbrella for Deion. But to me, I think now it comes down to a serious discussion where he fits, what position, and who can prepare him to get drafted in 2 years.
What are we looking at in terms of a decision timetable for Travis Hunter?
I don't think there is one right now. I think obviously with the dead period, he can't take visits right now. I wouldn't surprise me in January to see him get out a couple of places, but I do know he's had some early conversations with schools I mentioned in today's time, just today. So, keep an eye, I think, right now on, Colorado for sure is one, but Georgia, Miami, and USC are three I expect to kind of come out of this being at least considered by Travis Hunter.
All right, well, we're going to keep following that. Chad, thanks for dropping in on the inside scoop. A couple more days till signing day. Get some rest.
Look forward to it. Thanks, guys.
See ya. Travis Hunter hitting the portal. What makes him so valuable? If you're looking at it like you're a Miami or you're a USC or you're a Georgia, and you're going to have to invest in him through NIL with an opportunity, what does Travis Hunter bring?
I think the first thing you look at is the fact that he can help you on both sides of the football. I mean, if he goes to Colorado and ends up following Deion Sanders, you would have to imagine they're going to use him like they used him at Jackson State. And I think it's a very real possibility that if he ends up committing to a Georgia or a Miami, the conversation will exist. Okay, well, is he a DB for you? Is he a wide receiver? Are there some packages where you have him at wide receiver, start him at DB? So there's so much he brings to you on the field to where you don't just put him in this box of, okay, he's our starting corner and that's it. He can return kicks, he can do a lot for you. So the versatility of what he brings on the field, I think, is one huge reason why a lot of these programs are going to be blowing up his phone here in the very near future, if not already.
Yeah, and what he brings off the field, his marketability, his personality. I mean, if he can stay healthy, there's no doubt he can become the face of your franchise, your team, your program, whatever you want to call it in college football. So Travis Hunter brings a ton of value to the open market. So we'll see if he truly hits the open market. I'm going to find it hard to believe that he doesn't end up at Colorado, but hey, we'll see. All right, let's pivot now. Let's move on, and let's go to national recruiting analyst Sam Spiegelman. Sam, let's stay on the Colorado theme. Four-star athlete Malachi Coleman, previously committed to Nebraska. He visited Colorado over the weekend. What are you hearing coming out of that visit?
Yeah, I think this is going to be one to watch, but I also won't be ruling out Matt Rule just yet. This I know we want to talk about Deion Sanders, and I think that we're going to talk about this theme, but Matt Rule is also kind of taking shape at Nebraska at the same time, and this is so unique that Malachi Coleman, who obviously has been committed to Nebraska. That was a big get earlier for Mickey Joseph to recruit, now becomes such a pivotal figure with the early signing period between Nebraska under a completely new staff And Matt Rule, who has been, a really impactful recruiter in the state of Texas, now obviously in the Midwest, going against Deion Sanders in his first big-time Power 5 role. Just a battle of new coaches and new setups with a traditional power, and now Deion trying to make Colorado a national power.
What position do you see Malachi Coleman playing on the next level?
I think most schools view him as a safety. He's big and he's rangy, and I think he brings just a special level. He's big, but also, he cover a ton of ground. He's so quick. He's so long. Just coming from, they don't. There's in the Midwest. We've been hearing about Malachi Coleman for so long. I'm out in the South, so when there's a prospect in the Midwest like Malachi Coleman, you hear about him for years, and that's a name that I've continued to hear. Coaches in the South that recruit the South talk about him in the Midwest, and that's just a game changer with unique physical size and speed at the back end of the secondary.
Would be a huge pull for Deion Sanders in his first, well, it's not even his first real recruiting cycle. That'll come in 2024. But Malachi Coleman would be a big pull, along with four-star running back Dylan Edwards, who already committed. What are you expecting from the Buffaloes on signing day? Anything special?
Yeah, I think we can almost. I don't even think we have to tease anything. We know that Deion is going to pull, the ace out of his sleeve. I think he might have more than one. I know that a couple that are certainly in the works after a really pivotal weekend. I think Colorado had one of the bigger official visit weekends in the country. I don't think that any of us on this show have ever really said that before on a program. That Colorado had one of the bigger recruiting weekends before the early signing window. So that, first of all, is a statement in itself. But I do think that Deion, as he's known to do at Jackson State, and now I think we're going to come to expect that Colorado we're going to hear a name that a commitment flip, maybe some uncommitted guys end up going out west to Colorado. I think we can almost assure it at this point.
JD, it's going to be really interesting to see Deion hit the recruiting trail as a Power 5 coach and recruiter. What do you think it would be like to host Deion Sanders on an in-home official visit or in-home visit and have your mother cook him his food?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's huge to have a man with that kind of brand power. Like we talk about all the time with the NIL world, like Deion Sanders is a bigger brand than Colorado football. And that's not to knock Colorado football.
He's a brand in himself.
He's a businessman. Like he said, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman. Like that's Deion Sanders. And so I think you're going to see that have an impact if he's able to get into the home with a lot of these kids.
All right, some more in-home visits taking place down the stretch. Well, let's switch to five-star defensive lineman David Hicks. He wasn't in home with Texas A&M. He went to Texas A&M's home this week, and he took an official visit to A&M, the team that he's committed to. Now, Oregon was last weekend. He's been to Oklahoma before. Sam, what do you think about David Hicks and the chances that he flips on signing day now that he took this trip to A&M?
Yeah, I think I think that going into this visit, coming off of the Oregon visit, there was a lot of buzz. There was some optimism about Oregon's chances. Listen, he already took his official visit in the summer, and he's been back to Eugene twice. He is a top priority for the Oregon Ducks, and Dan Lanning, who recruited him while he was at Georgia and has a really long-standing relationship with Hicks and his family. They have members on that Oregon staff that recruit the state of Texas and do so at a very high level. If you look at the Ducks class, they got a lot of guys from the Lone Star State, and I think they still have a couple more to come. I think that after going back to Texas A&M, which has always been the theme of his recruitment, Texas A&M has gotten him on campus the most. They've obviously dug in with the Houston area since Jimbo Fisher arrived at College Station. He is one of the handful of top priority 2023 foundational pieces of this class. They cannot afford to lose him. I think after he returned to campus, there's some more confidence that they will hang on. I don't think it's over. I think this will go down to the wire. Oklahoma is still trying to stay involved. Oregon believes that they're a major threat, and Texas A&M obviously got the last word. But I think this will be definitely one of the storylines to watch heading into Wednesday.
It's not a commitment, but for Jimbo Fisher to hold on to the #1 defensive lineman in America, that's a huge accomplishment considering A&M's season. Another prospect that has been teetering on committing, decommitting, five-star Peyton Bowen. He's committed to Notre Dame, but he has said that he's going to make a, quote, final decision. When is this, quote, final decision going to come? Because he didn't announce anything over the weekend.
That's a great question. At this point, we're all on Peyton Bowen watch. I think we've been on Peyton Bowen watch, honestly, since the summertime. But first of all, credit Notre Dame, because I think that at this time a week ago, Notre Dame might have been in one of its strongest positions to hold on to the five-star safety than they had been since they got the commitment. You need to credit those relationships. We always talk about it, Marcus Freeman being the first to really forge a relationship with Peyton Bowen. And they did go in home with him last week rather. So they are still in this, trying to fight for their lives. But Oregon and Oklahoma have really come in and made a significant move with Peyton Bowen. I think they've really captured not only his attention, but obviously the attention of his entire family. You have to know that Denton is as close to Norman, Oklahoma as it gets. It's a little bit closer than South Bend, Indiana, or even Eugene, Oregon. Oklahoma has always recruited the Dallas-Fort Worth area very well, and in this case, they have never let up. Throughout Peyton Bowen's recruitment, he's even called them front runners with the amount of attention that they've shown him. And I think that they were the last team to go in home with him on Friday night. Since then, I think they've kind of stayed out of the public spotlight. I think everyone kind of sees the writing on the wall, but Oklahoma has made a very compelling push down the stretch, and I think that they are the team to watch for one of the nation's best safeties.
Critical recruitment for Notre Dame. He is their only five-star recruit that's currently committed to them, and if they lose Peyton Bowen, you could maybe see Notre Dame free fall out of the top 10. So we'll see what happens here, but it sounds like they got a good chance of holding on to him. Maybe we'll find out when he makes that, quote, final decision. Lastly, I want to ask about four-star top 200 DB Isaac Smith. LSU made a strong push this past weekend. I know he's a product of Mississippi. Where do you think his recruitment's headed coming into signing day?
Yeah, this is another one in the South to keep an eye on. One of the DBs that's done a really good job of kind of keeping his recruitment under wraps for the bulk of it, and it's trended a lot of different ways over since the spring. At one point, Mississippi. Ole Miss rather was the leader. At one point, A&M and Georgia were coming in, Vanderbilt, then Tennessee. LSU definitely made a move when they offered him late, and they've gotten him on campus and got the last official visit. But with the change at Mississippi State, there's a new coach, a defensive-minded coach that's really making Isaac Smith a priority down the stretch. Obviously, Mississippi State got him on campus a little bit earlier this month for his official visit. They've always been deemed the biggest threat to LSU from talking to people that are close to this recruitment. And I think down the stretch, it's starting to trend toward the in-state team. I don't think LSU is out of it. Obviously, they're in the mix with a few more DBs like Desmond Ricks and just got J.D. and Toviano last week. They're hoping to get Isaac Smith, but I think Mississippi State might be the team moving forward to keep an eye on.
We'll see. That's an exciting recruitment. All right, Sam, 36 hours to signing day. Go get some rest. Go break some stories. We'll talk to you again soon.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
See you, Sam. Man, LSU. They're really stacking up the DBs. I mean, we were saying that after JV and Toviano's commitment, he was the 6th DB committed. They're going to most likely, they have a good shot at Desmond Ricks, and then they want Isaac Smith too. Brian Kelly went in and identified a need at LSU when you say something like that.
And we talked about it with JV and Toviano's commitment. If you're currently in that LSU defensive back room, the challenge has been very much so laid out there. Like, hey, you better bring it because we got a lot of talented kids coming into this program, coming into this meeting room. They're going to be able to play and want to play quick, fast, in a hurry. So the challenge is set.
Yeah, and just across the country, there is just a huge game of musical chairs being played. And we're going to see when the music stops, who has a seat at the table. Well, we'll find out. But JD, you got a seat at my table anytime.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. Glad to be here.
Thanks for sitting shotgun with me on the Inside Scoop.
Always, brother. Signing day right around the corner. Glad to be a part of the madness.
All right, we will be back. I don't know exactly our schedule between now and signing day, but if you guys need anything when it comes to recruiting, On3 YouTube page is where it's at. Hit that subscribe button for us. Thank you.